You do not destroy your own life because you are lazy. You are not flawed. You are not broken. You systematically dismantle your own success for a highly specific, biological reason. Your brain's survival architecture interprets happiness as a lethal threat. It processes visibility and victory as imminent physical danger to your biological baseline. You are not failing. You are executing a highly efficient, deeply ingrained survival protocol. Watch closely how this reaction unfolds. A professional sits at their desk at 11:30 p.m. The monitor illuminates the final, pristine draft of a career-defining proposal. The document is completely finished. It requires exactly one physical click on the send button. Instead, the autonomic nervous system intervenes. Their breathing immediately becomes shallow and erratic. A sudden, hollow ache materializes in the center of their gut. The physical connection between intention and motor control is severed. Their fingers slowly pull away from the mouse. They open a new browser tab. They navigate directly to a social media feed. They begin scrolling. The facial expression becomes completely blank and glazed. The body remains motionless. They sit in complete silence for 3 consecutive hours. The submission deadline officially passes. At that precise second, a heavy, profound physical relaxation washes over their shoulders. The perceived biological threat has been successfully neutralized. But here is the brutal physical reality. Why does the human nervous system process a life-changing victory as an imminent physical danger? Why does the brain force the body to abort the mission just inches from the finish line? We do not sabotage ourselves because we secretly enjoy suffering. You do it because your brain has one overriding biological mandate. It must maintain absolute predictability. To a traumatized nervous system, familiar misery is chemically coded as safe. Unfamiliar joy is instantly coded as danger. Deep inside your brain sits the Anterior Cingulate Cortex. It operates as your primary biological error detection center. Consider a person holding a deeply ingrained, subconscious belief of worthlessness. Suddenly, they experience a massive wave of genuine success, or they receive pure, unconditional love. The Anterior Cingulate Cortex immediately registers a massive psychological contradiction. It detects a severe, irreconcilable mismatch. The external reality says you are worthy. The internal nervous system says this is a lethal lie. The actual fatal mechanism is the pursuit of homeostasis. To resolve this critical biological error, the brain must take immediate action. It must forcefully stop the resulting massive spike in anxiety. So it initiates an aggressive sabotage protocol. It physically compels the individual to dismantle the positive external reality. You tear down your own life. You break it apart until it perfectly matches your miserable, neurologically familiar baseline. The brain actively sacrifices your external success. It destroys your achievements purely to achieve internal neurochemical homeostasis. Watch closely how they react in the physical world. A woman sits at a restaurant on a third date. She is with a genuinely attentive, emotionally available partner. The partner smiles, leans in, and sincerely compliments her intellect. Instantly, her autonomic nervous system spikes. Her jaw physically clenches tight. She violently shifts her body weight away from the table. She crosses her arms tightly across her chest. She abruptly introduces a highly aggressive, deeply controversial political topic. She adopts a harsh, mocking vocal tone. She watches his face physically fall. She observes his posture stiffen and pull away. She has entirely, efficiently dismantled the evening's intimacy. The biological consequence is brutal. It results in the systematic alienation of healthy relationships. It destroys incoming, life-altering opportunities. It guarantees a lifelong state of complete isolation, and your brain tragically misinterprets this exact isolation as absolute security. This violent rejection of the unfamiliar explains exactly why we push away love. But it gets worse. What happens when this exact same biological mechanism infects your ambition? What happens when it wears a disguise so pristine, society actually stands up and applauds it? Perfectionism is not a standard of excellence. It is a clinical avoidance, strategy. It is a highly sophisticated mask worn by paralyzing fear. It is designed specifically to prevent you from ever entering the arena of human judgment. In early human history, being ostracized from the tribe meant certain physical death. Your amygdala evolved to scan ruthlessly for behaviors that might trigger social rejection. It operates today as a hyper-vigilant defense mechanism. Perfectionism is not about creating a flawless product. It is about ensuring the work is never actually seen. By demanding an absolute physical impossibility, your brain guarantees a specific outcome. You are never judged. You are never criticized. You are never exiled from the group. The actual fatal mechanism is cognitive overload. When perfectionism is triggered, your prefrontal cortex is immediately flooded. It is forced to process an infinite number of microscopic what-if threat scenarios. This severe processing demand rapidly depletes the brain's glucose reserves. It results in literal executive dysfunction. The brain physically freezes. This paralysis is not born out of laziness. It is a state of absolute neurological exhaustion. Watch closely how they react in the physical world. A content creator sits alone in front of a camera lens. They record the exact first sentence of a video. They immediately hit stop. They meticulously review the short footage. They notice a microscopic shadow resting on their left cheek. They spend 10 minutes adjusting the lighting ring by half an inch. They press record again. They stutter slightly on the third syllable. They instantly delete the entire file. They spend the next 45 minutes silently adjusting a microphone stand. 4 hours quietly pass in the empty room. The camera battery finally dies. Not a single second of usable footage is saved to the hard drive. The biological consequence is the utter stagnation of human potential. It forces the onset of a chronic low-grade depression. A depression caused entirely by a lifetime of suppressed output. Perfectionism efficiently stops us from ever starting. What happens if we somehow force our way through the paralysis? What happens if we actually achieve the exact success we desire? The brain instantly deploys its final, most devastating countermeasure. The closer you get to actualizing your potential, the closer you get to finally being recognized, the more violently your nervous system will react. It will actively attempt to shut you down. It will do everything in its power to render you completely invisible. The actual fatal mechanism lies in the primitive brainstem. When you achieve undeniable success, when you step into the spotlight and are finally seen by the world, your brain does not process this as a victory. It processes this visibility exactly as it would being spotted by an apex predator in the wild. The brain stem immediately triggers a massive sympathetic nervous system arousal. It forces your body into a severe state of fight, flight, or freeze. During this high-stakes moment of recognition, your adrenal glands fire. They dump a massive surge of cortisol directly into your bloodstream. This toxic stress hormone travels straight to your brain. It chemically and physically impairs your hippocampus. It aggressively blocks your neurological access to specific, targeted memories. You literally cannot remember your past competence. You lose cognitive access to the years of training and hard work that got you there. You experience what society casually calls imposter syndrome, but it is not a psychological flaw. Chemically, your brain has temporarily erased the actual data that proves you belong in that room. Watch closely how they react in the physical world. A mid-level manager is unexpectedly pulled into an executive boardroom. They are explicitly informed they are being promoted to vice president. The promotion is based entirely on their own stellar, undeniable performance metrics. Instead of smiling, their autonomic nervous system completely takes over. Their pupils instantly dilate in terror. They physically shrink down into their leather chair. They instinctively round their shoulders inward to protect their vital organs. They dramatically lower the pitch and volume of their speaking voice. They break eye contact and stare directly at the wooden table. They immediately attribute their stellar numbers to a lucky quarter. They desperately try to hand the credit over to the rest of the team. They actively attempt to convince the senior executives that a grave mistake has been made. The biological consequence is a rigid, self-imposed career ceiling. It forces a permanent state of intense physiological burnout. You spend your entire adult life constantly fighting your own potential. You apologize endlessly for your own physical presence. You systematically shrink away from the exact achievements you worked a decade to secure. But here is the brutal physical reality. If our own neurobiology is literally hardwired to sabotage our ascension, how do we outsmart a physiological system? How do we permanently override an autonomic nervous system that is actively trying to keep us safely miserable? Self-sabotage is not a conscious enemy. You cannot destroy it with sheer human willpower. It is an outdated, highly traumatized psychological immune system. It is a rigid neurological defense mechanism you constructed decades ago. You built this specific defensive circuit in childhood to survive. You needed it to navigate environments where love was strictly conditional. You needed it where being physically visible was inherently dangerous. But you are no longer a powerless child. That exact same biological defense mechanism is now actively suffocating you. The intense physical resistance you feel right before you succeed is not a defect. It is not a sign that you are fundamentally broken. It is the brutal, undeniable friction of your own identity, physically expanding. It is the literal, neurological sensation of old neural pathways dying inside your brain. So how do you actually intervene? You must deploy somatic intervention. You must execute absolute micro-defiance. When the violent urge to sabotage suddenly hits, when you feel the overwhelming physical compulsion to procrastinate or flee the room, do not attempt to argue with your own thoughts. Your prefrontal cortex is already compromised by cortisol. Instead, acknowledge the severe physiological spike. Feel the rapid acceleration of your racing heart. Notice the tight, restrictive physical pressure crushing your chest. Open your mouth and state out loud to yourself in the empty room, "I am safe to proceed." Then, you must execute the absolute smallest mechanical action forward. Do not try to finish the entire project. Just physically move your right index finger and hit send. Force your physical body to stay in that exact same room for exactly 60 more seconds. Open your mouth and speak exactly one more sentence. Consciously regulate the depth and pace of your breathing. This specific mechanical action directly stimulates your vagus nerve. It forces a chemical signal of biological safety straight up into your brainstem. You do not override the sabotage protocol by magically eliminating the fear. You override it by taking precise, mechanical physical action while the fear is fully present. You literally force your brain to record a brand new neurological outcome. Your past programming is a concrete biological fact, but your future is a mechanical choice. It is a choice executed strictly in the present second. If you want to stop blindly fighting your own symptoms, if you want to finally understand the brutal physical mechanics of your own mind, subscribe. We dissect the biological truth here. See you in the next one.